like my mom. When I was younger, I come home from school and she has my Hybrid Theory Linkin Park CD in her hand, and I'm like, "What's happening?" She's like, What does this mean?" And I'm like, "It's a it's a CD." She's like, "Yeah, but what does it mean in the end? It doesn't even matter. Are you suicidal?" I'm like,
Oh
"No,
no.
it's song lyrics." And then with her very strong black woman strength, snapped it in her hand. And apart, like, I babysat, so I just rebought and hit it better. I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
You're like, oh,
but
you're gonna get
I
another one.
It's Johnny Late Night! And now here's your host, Johnny Rogers!
Welcome back, everyone, to episode number 72 of the Johnny Rogers Show. I'm very excited for my guest today. She is a stand-up comedian whose humor is described as both eccentric and captivating. She first launched her comedy career in January of 2019 in Ottawa, Ontario, exploding into the nation's capital with her Indigenous comedy show called Got Land, for which she aims to communicate solidarity through humor and laughter. You can catch her on CBC Gem's new wave of stand-up season 2. She has performed with the Arctic Comedy Festival in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and she has also had the opportunity to perform on Just for Laughs, JFL 42, Toronto in 2022, and all of that is really cool for me, but like the coolest thing that you've done is appear on Family Feud, so I really actually want to get into that. But ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, please give it up for my friend and yours, Janelle Niles.
Hi, Kwei. Thank you so much for having me.
As I butcher my intro.
No, it's all good.
You win some, you lose some, right, Janelle?
Oh, yep. I wrote that myself, so I get it.
I did the same thing to Simone. She was on if you want to check out last week's
Yeah, I
podcast,
saw it.
everybody.
Yeah.
But I was like, I took the intro from her website, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, damn, Simone, this is long. Let's keep going. I think that's a good thing, though. I think you want, like, the longer your bio, the more shit you've done, right?
Exactly. I'm right now I'm just kind of like choosing my best Magic the Gathering cards. Like what can I put
Yeah, yeah.
into the deck so I can like but I love this card, but
Yeah.
this card's better. I'm like, ah.
That's a little bit of what comedy is too. It's like,
Yeah,
what combo of credits can I provide to this person to make them give me the thing that I want?
exactly. Even on stage, like what is the symmetry of jokes? Like I really
Yes.
like this joke, but it doesn't work with what I'm doing right now. So, oh yeah.
Yeah. And so as always, people know this by now, but you're gonna shout out some of your upcoming shows, or
Hmm.
I'll pull up your Instagram as well if people want to give you a follow. Just tell me if I don't got the right one, but it's Janelle.Niles, right?
Yes.
On Instagram. You can also go to Linktree /Janelle Niles. It's great that every artist has these because it's a one-stop shop without needing to necessarily put together a whole website. But tons of information on there, as well as gotlandcomedy.com as well, your YouTube page. But people know I put all these links in the description below. If you're having a hard time finding them, you can always just click on those links. But do you want to tell anybody about any shows you have coming up or any exciting projects?
So my biggest show coming up would be Got Land, Indigenous Comedy Show with Crack Up Comedy Festival this March 23rd at Algonquin Commons Theater. That's a big, huge handful. But we have amazing comedians such as Patrick Chichu, Lena Recklet, Don Kelly is our host, Sean Murasu, who's the native pool boy, David Ohokanyuwak, and Nicole Ititi. So we have a bunch of Indigenous comedians coming to the nation's capital for Crack Up Comedy Festival, and I'm so excited. It's something that is going to be an annual thing. I hope this is our second year doing it.
Hey, no, yeah, here's to it being an annual thing for sure. And I love
Oh, for
Don
sure.
Kelly's great host.
Oh,
Um, your word for today was audacity. So what made you think of the word audacity and wanting to start there?
because I'm a risk taker. I'm definitely a risk taker. I uh, I I adhere at the side of audacity. I laugh in the face of audacity, whether it's good or bad. But when I do my stand-up comedy, I hear a lot of the audience member goes, "Jesus," you know what I mean? And when I hear that, I know, okay, all right. I'm treading on water. I'm treading on what, like Jesus. I'm treading
Yeah,
on
yeah,
water,
yeah.
and I'm doing something that is out of the box that they haven't heard before, and that's where I want to stay on the side of audacity.
I love that. So what's the most audacious thing you've done? I
My
just thought that was too good of a word not to
no
include it
way.
in the question.
The
I was like,
most
audacious. I
audacious.
like that.
I performed at Indigenous Day Live last year in June, and they had me dressed up as the RCMP. And I'm like, no other Indigenous comedian would ever dress up for the RCMP. Brought live, broadcasted on TV, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I have one question. And they're like, what? I'm like, can I mock them?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a
yeah, yeah.
comedian because let them be in on the joke, you know. So they had me come out on this little horsey, and I was just like galloping.
Was it one of those ones with like a stick with the horse
Yes,
on the head?
yes,
Nice. I love
yeah.
those.
So I just galloped like that, and like that was
Yeah,
my
yeah.
mocking moment, and the crowd loved it. Everybody had a great time, but that was my most audacious moment, as if she would do that, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how you always know you're onto something is when people go, "Oh, I don't know if you should do that."
Right,
When they get a little like
a little tense.
yeah, a little tense in their shoulders, you're like, "Oh, I definitely have to do it now." Like there's no question. But
I say now, actually, sorry to interrupt. I say that now on stage. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'm working on my groan to laugh ratio. We're at a 3 to 4.
yeah, I love like techniques like that comedians use to um diffuse what would otherwise be uncomfortable situations, right? Because there's some people, it's very interesting seeing how everybody kind of interprets the world. Like the world in reality is the same, but it's different because we all interpret it through our specific lens of like our traumas, our insecurities, our previous relationships, everything that we've done up until that point, right? So I always find it like interesting seeing how different comedians kind of hold their own on stage, right? Like by using those moments where if somebody else was on stage and they didn't have that tactic in their mind of like, I'm going to check the groan to laughter ratio, they might close in on themselves on that
Yes.
groan, right? Or they might start talking really fast to try to fill the silence. And it's like,
Yeah.
I,
I call them savers. I have
savers.
savers, and it's the tension's built, but my jokes aren't releasing it the way I want to. So in that moment of silence, I have some savers in my back pocket. When I do get nervous, now I actually mention it. I was like, "Who? I'm just a little nervous up here. It's hard to perform for a jury of my pilgrims." You know.
Yeah. That's another like good secret too, is like whatever you're feeling, attack that. Like
Yes.
use that as your like superpower in a way, right? Like I know a lot of comedians, the reason why that we are comedians is because at some point in our life we had to use laughter to defend ourselves or
Hmm.
to get over a trauma or something. But for you, for starting in comedy, right? I mean, you started at the best time, Janelle, right before a global pandemic.
I know, just like smack dab
Yeah,
year
just
right before
right
it.
there. You got a
Yeah.
little taste of what it was like, and then it's like you're into a whole new world, and now another new world after that. So,
Hmm.
what was that like for you trying to start and then it being kind of halted? Were you discouraged in any way, or did you see it as like a new opportunity?
So the pandemic hit me a year into I was just finishing my second year of college. And I started in January 2019, and I was just hustling my butt. And then as we were graduating our second year of massage therapy, uh, they're like, okay, we're going to have to switch to Zoom in our third year. And I'm like, what am I going to do? It's third year massage
Yeah,
therapy. It's all
yeah,
hands on. It's all practical. It's all
that's
clinic. And
crazy.
I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like massage the kink out of the K on my keyboard? Like give
Yeah.
the O some special treatment? Like I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm a hands-on learner. I can't like just learn from reading a book, or I have to be like it has to be practical. Hence why I'm out at comedy clubs 4 to 5 times a week so I can learn. And so I decided I was actually just getting out of security. In my mind, I'm like, I wanted to be a massage therapist. I don't want to be a security guard anymore, but I also want to be a comedian. So when the pandemic happened, it gave me the biggest ultimatum. It's like, what do you really want to do? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
stand up comedy. I want to become a comedian. This will be my full-time job. I'm 100% all in, and I made the choice. And Zoom actually, I actually went to Zoom, not for massage, but for to keep my comedy gears well lubricated, and we did Zoom shows, and I made Gotland Indigenous Comedy Show an official business during the pandemic. I know a lot of
It's
people are like, start your
fantastic.
own business. I
Yeah.
actually did with
But
Gotland.
you did this in this, I think every move that you've made so far has, I mean, other people are going to be like, how did she get so successful so fast? They're like, look at the moves that she's made.
Yeah.
She moved without fear, without judgment of other people, and it worked. It paid off, right? Like you took a big risk and it paid off, but they're calculated risks, right? Like forming a collective in comedy is not a big thing that people do. But if you actually look at who are the most successful comedians, they typically have a collective around them. I mean, Christ, look at the impact that Joe Rogan and his friends have had for each other. It's like a trickle down effect, right? Like you've got, in the early days of his podcasting, he's got Ari Shaffir, Tom Segura, and Burt Kreischer on his podcast constantly.
And Joey Diaz.
And Joey Diaz, right? But those four though were always like doing podcasts I found together, and now they're some of the biggest acts. They sell arenas, you know, and that's because together we are stronger, right? So early on in a comedy career, a lot of people will think like, oh, maybe I need to, you know, just, it's that lone wolf mentality. Like I gotta just do this by myself, you know, nose to the grindstone. It's like, you're gonna go crazy. Like,
oh yeah, because you have no objectivity when it's only your brain. Like that's why with single moms, they don't have that extra person to be like, hey, you know, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. You shouldn't be eating Cheerios for breakfast.
Exactly. That's why having a 2-parent household is great, because you have you have some objectivity, you know, objectivity.
Yeah.
But I actually been watching Joe Rogan since 2010. I as much as I watch Philip DeFranco,
I love Philly D too. Yeah, he's so good. Did you watch him back when he was SXE Phil? Yes, yeah, me too.
So I used to watch them all the time, and I actually learned a lot from Joe Rogan's crew. I commend Ari Shaffir. I love him to death. He had this kind of like workshop where he brought all these open micers in for like a 3.5 hour thing, and I listened to it a lot, like twice a year at least, because I learned something new every time I listen to it. Now the Ottawa comedy scene might like they mock me for taking advice from pros. I don't know why they do that.
That's insane.
I know, they're just all like, oh,
what do you think education is?
About that. Yeah, exactly.
Education is advice from pros. It's advice from people who are experienced in that field.
Right? Would you mock your professors? Anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, side tangent.
No worries. And in that 3.5 hour kind of lecture workshop, he says that he used to be one of those guys that would rag on the little guy coming up, wondering why is he getting everything? He's not funny. And he would just shit talk, excuse the language, but he would just shit. And then he realized that's not helping me, and it's not helping anyone else around. And the more you talk smack about someone else, a producer's going to hear it, or this is going to hear it. And they're going to be like, well, I don't really want to work with you because you don't seem like you're a team player. You know?
Yeah.
So I just help as many people as I can. And I would love to bring people with me, but it's hard when it's hard to bring people with me when they won't even like take my hand to begin with. You know?
Yeah, or even just like have the conversation, you know, like that's I find the biggest thing is there can be a lot of like snobs in a sense, right? Where they are certain that what they're doing is the path and anyone else is just, you know, but like a distraction almost. Like I don't even want to pay attention to that. That Ari Shaffir thing though, same thing, religiously listen to that over and over and over again. And I have a notebook somewhere that's just filled with notes from that talk that I wrote down, because there was so much good advice in that, even about like how to get a manager and talking about like moving from open mics to book shows. You know, he said Mitzi Shore was like telling him like, you're building a lot of bad habits because you're only doing these shows. You need to branch out and start producing your own shows and booking shows. And like, so it's cool to see that kind of validation where it's like, oh, somebody else also watched that and it's paying off for them too. Like that means the lessons worked, right?
Yeah, I try to tell people, I share those things. I'm like, you want to know why I'm getting so fast? This is
Yeah.
why. And I
Yeah.
could show them my plan or my thing, and they
Hmm.
still wouldn't believe it because I'm not smart enough. I'm
Yeah.
not, they don't think I'm educated enough. I know I used to be homeless. I knew I grew up in the baby mama project. I knew I barely passed high school, but I'm still street smart and I still can hustle. And that's what I bring those talents and those tools to my
Yeah.
business.
I'm gonna touch on that. Let's go back to
Good.
that because I don't like skipping. The interesting thing with podcasting is you'll have as an interviewer at least you'll have a question in mind, but sometimes something else will come up where you're like, so I've seen this on a lot of podcasts where you can tell that they've been waiting to say something,
Hmm.
and then they kind of force it into the conversation, but it doesn't make sense because you've moved on past that now.
Yeah.
And I never want to be that. So I want to focus in on, you just said I was homeless.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So
Talk
I've
to me
been
about that experience.
trigger warning for anybody watching. This is a kind of a sad story. If I'm laughing or speaking, it's because I'm speaking on the audacity of the
Mhm.
situation. So I was homeless about 3 times in my life. I was homeless with my twin sister, my little sister, my mother at a very young age. It's not fun getting your period in a shelter, I'll tell you that. And it's also it's not fun wondering where your next meal is or what school you're gonna head into. But that was out of my control. And then I became homeless when I got kicked out the house. I had somewhere to live immediately after I got kicked out the house, but that fell through. Um, at age 18, 19. And I was on the streets and I became a street kid. My nickname was Pinky, and a lot of people still try to call me Pinky today. I'm like, Janelle now, but that's fine. Okay. You had a bright pink mohawk. And
Ah.
I'm actually 10 years sober from party drugs. So that's what I was doing there. We would just be on the street doing hard drugs until the sun came up, and it was just rinse, repeat, find somewhere to
Mm.
sleep during the day, party all night. And it was 2006, 7, and 8. And by 2009, my now ex-husband brought me up to Yellowknife, where we were together for 3 years, and I got sober. And I came back down in my mid 20s, and he knocked up his mistress and kicked me out the house and mailed me my stuff. So while
This is
he was
like a
in Yellowknife, yes,
telenovela.
and it's actually the plot to Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Anyway, so he he mailed me my stuff while I was in Ottawa. He was in Yellowknife. He moved his mistress in, and then I was homeless for the third time in my life.
Wow.
And who is my sponsor right now is Keeper of the Circle. They had a pre-employment program called Aboriginal Women in Mining, and someone I looked up to, a friend of mine in Yellowknife. I begged every single person I knew, please bring me back. I'm going to win my ex-husband back. And this one lady, Mira, she says, I could do that, Janelle. I could give you a couch to sleep on. You can try to win your ex-husband back, but I got something better for you. My mother works for Keepers of the Circle. She can get you in this program, Aboriginal Women in Mining. They have a women's center. And then I took that risk. I took that audacity, and I was just like, fine, I'm going to do it. And then the Anishinaabe and Matachewaning Temiskaming Women's Center took me in for 9 months out of my homelessness. Gave me a lot of skills and training to work in the mines, but because gold fell through, they didn't have those jobs for me. So they're like, Janelle, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'll be a security guard because I got the tenacity and the
Yeah, yeah,
audacity.
yeah.
I'm a force. And they helped me get my security license. And I became a security guard for 7 years and got out of homelessness, got out of a debt. I got my life together. And
Wow.
being a security guard, I realized I could go to college, and then from college, comedy.
Hmm.
So yes, I've been homeless. I've been on
Quite
the
a
streets.
journey.
Oh yes, I try to tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm no silver spoon. I did not, I persevered, and I'm a
Hmm.
survivor of my circumstance. I'm not a victim in that sense. So I like to tell people my story. I'm actually having a documentary shot this week about it. So
As you should.
yeah.
That's fucking way documentary worthy.
Yeah,
Jesus, Janelle.
I missed a lot of steps there, but I'm like, how do I get this out in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, we don't even need we got an hour, you know what I mean? Like go
You know.
into it if you want to go into it. Don't feel like you need to rush through anything because this is
Mhm.
your life, right? I'm here
Yes.
to tell your story. That's the purpose of this podcast with me adding my slight anecdotes in there whenever I can. But that, you know, I've always believed this, but it's hard to prove that it's true. And
Mhm.
it's actually like you and Simone are living proof of this theory that I have that comedy, being a great stand-up comedian, shifting back to that,
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily depend on someone's own unique genius or whatever. Like, oh, they're a like somebody might look at you and be like, oh, she's a prodigy, she's moving so fast through the ranks. But I'm like, no, it's life experience.
Yes.
It's you've been through way worse shit than doing 5 minutes of jokes on a stage. So when you get up there, it's nothing. It's like you
Yes.
you have so much experience to pull from, and the greatest comedy is real pain. It's real trauma, right? Like
Mhm.
it's that's where it can come from, and you can see that in people who got into comedy, like, you know, later in life. Like they didn't
Mhm.
do it like I started when I was 18. Like it's all I've
Oh,
known,
wow.
right? Like I've wanted to be as a comedian since I was like 11, and that's all I've thought about since then. And then I didn't start doing it until I was 18. But I find it difficult to write from experience because all I've experienced is comedy. So there's not a lot of like trauma per se to
Mhm.
pull on. So a lot of my comedy has to be like my observation, like the way that my brain works is how I can pull that out of there. How have you found like, so you decide that you want to be a comedian and you start writing and start the process of creating that first 5 minute set, your
Mhm.
first ever baby set to go on stage. What did you pull from? Did you pull from life experience? Did you pull from observation? What was your mission when you started?
I would say I'm an observational comic because I have a lot. I've lived 2 lives, so God's gonna have to kill me twice. You know, I'm just like,
That's got to be a clip it.
yes.
That's so funny.
um, so I've always wanted to be a comedian since I was like 14 years old. I got a big pop in an assembly, and I actually that was one of my first jokes because it was like the beginning of my comedy because I've always remembered it. However, it's quite dark, and I don't think I can repeat it here. Maybe you'll see it on stage, you know. But I brought that joke to the stage and a lot of just life experiences. Like my mom, when I was younger, I come home from school and she has my Hybrid Theory Linkin Park CD in her hand. And I'm like, what's happening? She's like, what does this mean? And I'm like, it's a, it's a CD. She's like, yeah, but what does it mean in the end? It doesn't even matter. Are you suicidal? I'm like,
Oh no.
no, it's song lyrics. And then with her very strong black woman strength snapped it in her hand and apart like I babysat so I just rebought and hit it better. I was like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know
You're like, well,
but
you're gonna
I
get another one.
so that was one of my first jokes that I said and it never really got a laugh but it was almost like getting it out there, you know. In my head it was funny because I just rebought the CD. You know, like you can't hurt me when I can like
Yeah.
just rebuy something. It's not, you know. And I also brought up that story of high school that I cannot repeat, too dark. And it was great. It was just like I had these moments in my life where I'm like, I find them hilarious because that's how I deal with trauma. I kind of like tackle tough topics through humor, and that's what I bring with
Hmm.
Gotland as well. Just helping people understand our issues in a different way, not making light of them, but calling attention to them in a certain way. And
Hmm.
I love George Carlin for that because he changed the
Yes.
world. And I'm like, if you can change the world with comedy, you have to start somewhere. But I did want to go back track to what you said earlier. Amazing comedian, love him to death, David Brennan. He actually said, when you're up there on stage, just be present in the moment. And for the first 3.5 years, I was trying to be someone I was not. And
Mm,
the great John Wing, love John.
John's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a walk up in Iqaluit. We were doing the Crack Up Comedy Festival together, and we were just out for a walk, grabbing a coffee. And he's like, Janelle, I seen you do comedy twice, but you're doing something up there. And I'm like, he's like, can I tell you? I'm like, yes, because people are scared to tell me anything,
Yeah.
because they think I'm going to snap at them. But I love it. I love tags. I love constructive criticism. I just hate abrupt criticism, but we can get
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that later. So he says, Janelle, it looks like you are acting the way you believe the audience wants you to act as a comedian
Ah,
and not being yourself. Because we're
yeah.
talking, we're laughing. Where's that Janelle up there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually, my brain just kind of like,
The same thing happened to me.
yes. And so now I go up there and I'm loose and I'm
Yeah.
myself because I can trust myself I know how to write a joke. I know how to
Mm-hmm.
talk up there. Remember, Ari said it takes about 3, 4 years to get comfortable up there. And
Mm-hmm.
John kind of burst that bubble for me. And I was like, no longer pretending to be something I'm not, even though I love the suits and I love the wig. I'm still going
Yeah.
to wear that, but I'm still going to be Janelle. I'm going to be moving a lot more. I'm going to do a lot more act outs.
Yeah.
But
You should do is take the wig off and just set it on the mic
yes,
stand.
I actually did a drag king set
I would
uh,
die
2 days
laughing.
ago. Yes, I did a drag king set, and in my song, I lip synced "Welcome to the Black Parade" by My Chemical Romance. Yeah, there's a there's a theory here. I love that stuff. I'm an old emo kid, and in the when I was doing the choreography, I ripped off my wig. It's like it was so fun. That's why you said that. I was like, yeah, that's what I do sometimes. But
Yeah.
dark joke alert. I was like, I'm the first native chick to scalp herself on stage, and I just like throw it to the side. I'm just being myself. This is my truth and reconciliation. I'm just being myself.
But I fucking love joke. Like people say that joke is dark, or they're like, you're making light of the situation, and like you're viewing it wrong. It's exactly what you just said. It's calling attention to, hey, this actually happened. You may
Yes.
have forgotten about this, but this is shit that actually went down.
Lest we
And
forget. Yes.
like fucking, I'm just making you laugh and then go, oh, like just
That's it.
Jesus. But going back to what you said, like that was a huge turning point for me as well. Is when I started comedy, I was so excited about it, and I would always show my friends like, hey, check out my latest set. Like, look at it. What do you think? And I remember my good friend who I've been friends with since I was 10. His older brother watched it, and he's like, he goes, he didn't even say like, can I tell you something? Or it just came out of him, which I appreciate even more. He goes, it sounds like you're doing an impression of what you think a comedian should sound like.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, you're right. And then I looked at it through that lens from then on, like, is this me doing an impression of what I think a comedian sounds like? Or am I just being myself on stage? And
Mm-hmm.
that's the real turning point for a lot of people in your careers. You stop doing an impression of your favorite comedians and trying to mold yourself into that. And then you just become yourself. And now I'm like so much more relaxed when I'm on stage. Like it's crazy. I also love because like when the pandemic happened, I had been doing comedy for 9 years. And I was like, just I don't want to do Zoom shows. I'm so used to doing stand-up shows. I couldn't adapt. I just couldn't change. And then I saw people doing comedy sketches and I couldn't adapt. I couldn't change. I was like, I don't want to do that either. Like I just don't, it's not me. Like I don't want to do it. And then I dove into music and I just started writing songs and making music. And I did that for 2 years. And now moving back to Ottawa, I've started to slowly put my feet back in the water of doing sets like here and there and just trying to have fun with it. Like I just trying to reconnect with that first love of doing it, and I found since doing music, it helps me, like I can feel beats in my set now. Like I'm
Yes.
hitting, like I'm more relaxed. I'm like, it feels musical to me almost
Mm-hmm.
without being like, theater musical about it. But it made me a lot more calm in my jokes and myself, and it allowed me to step away from the material, revisit again with new eyes, and then bring some life into jokes that I was getting so tired of telling.
Yes.
Because there's a thing that happens when you say the same thing night after night after night. Like hustling when I lived in Toronto, you're doing like 3 sets, 4 sets a night, as many as you can, like 5 nights a week, whatever. If you get on book shows, that's even better. And you just start to, if you're not careful and you're not trying new stuff, you start to lose touch with yourself a little bit. And the material isn't funny to you anymore. You're just going through the motions. Have you had a joke that you've written early on in your career that you've now, with new tool sets, I guess you could say, revisited and then kind of tried to bring back?
Oh yeah, I have a couple of them. Something that I have extended or reworded. I would have to say it is my igloo joke. I added a front and a bottom to it, and it's just it works a lot better now. I
Mm.
was My twin sister, she actually told me, "Oh, your jokes used to be so much longer. Why are they so short?" Because the scene said, "I'm talking too much up there. I'm not getting to the joke." So I shorten, and now I can expand, but I'm punching up. And I'm punching up those little jokes and making them funny, so I'm not just like over explaining my jokes.
Hmm.
So yes, my igloo lick joke, and but a couple other jokes I'm looking here as like old ones. My thing is, it's hard to work on old jokes too because I've already done them on CBC Gem, so I guess
Yeah,
it's kind
yeah.
of
You
like
kind of
I
the
burnt them.
materials burned.
So
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if I
yeah.
mention the same topic, I'm not
Yeah.
doing the same joke, but I am
Although
working on
I
different
will
veins.
say, when I had Mike Reed on the podcast,
Yeah.
and he talked about something similar to that, about how he used to think like, oh, if I've recorded this, I can't do the joke again. And then he realized, somebody told him, he was like, you know that there's like 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
Somebody hasn't heard that joke. Somebody.
Yeah.
And like most of the time, somebody hasn't watched that set. So if they see you do the joke again, they're not going to be like, hey, I've seen that on Instagram,
Hmm.
or I've seen that before. It's not even going to happen. It's not going to happen
Yeah.
unless you're like, fucking Kevin Hart can't do
Yes.
that, right? You know what I mean? Like he doesn't
Right.
have that luxury. Everyone's probably seen that joke that he's done or whatever, right? And they can quote it even
Yes.
too. So we have that luxury as kind of like up and coming comedians to revisit stuff that we've even put on an album, or
Yeah.
recorded, and like really even maybe even take it in a new direction, which
That's exactly what I was saying. Finding a new angle, having a
mhm,
new, I might mention the same type of topic, but I might be going somewhere else with it. So it's
yeah,
not the same joke as it's the same premise, but I'm going other. Like I just developed a new joke, Moose Knuckles, and it is,
such a funny ass
mwah.
word.
Yes, and I have to thank Toronto because it was the first time I ever said it on stage at an open mic at the Comedy Lab, and I didn't know where I was going with it. And then I went to talk to some comedians up there, and then boom, the tag came to me. And then I came back and talked to them after I had smudged my lungs, and then and then they're like, yeah, and this and this. I'm like, yeah, and that and that, and then we all just wrote it together. So Toronto helped me write this beautiful bit. Just so excited to showcase the comedian I am now. Because when I was getting new wave of stand up and stuff, I was only 2 years in. I was a baby. I was so green, and I can't even watch my set
Yeah, I
because
was gonna
you know
say
how
you're
it's
gonna look
so
back on that
icky.
and cringe,
They're like,
but it's pretty cool
oh,
that you have a
yeah,
set that early on, like recorded.
yeah,
Like that's what's gonna be really cool about it, is being able to
yeah,
look back and go like, oh wow, like I can really see where I was at in this point in time.
yeah.
I don't even actually have my first ever set. The earliest recording that I have is like 2014.
Oh
So
wow,
I did comedy for 3 years and I didn't record anything. I just did it. I
yeah,
just was like out doing it, right? And never thought to like put something down. Actually, that's a lie. I had my second ever set on video and it was on YouTube in like 2012. But I was also at the same time, like I was graduating police foundation. So I was going
yeah,
to be a cop. And I was like, I can't let a policing agency see me talking about doing drugs on YouTube.
right.
Like that's crazy. So I deleted the video and now I don't have it. I'm like, oh man, I wish I had just privated the video or something.
That you said that on that same vein, I actually tried for the RCMP myself at one time. So
Hey,
I got a challenge coin. For 3 years, I wanted to be RCMP. And then some elders told me about the Highway of Tears and their possible, um, I don't want to get into it, but it's just
Involvement in that?
involved. Yeah. So I was
Mm.
like, I don't want to be on, I don't want to be the enemy of my people.
Do you
So
I can
but I'll
see that
keep this to me.
perspective. I
Yeah.
can see that perspective, but I do think there is something about people who want to try to um, create change from within the
Oh,
system.
that was
Do you
my,
think
that,
it's
yeah,
possible, or like was that your mentality going in?
yes.
Was like, I can change
100%.
this.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the change I
Mhm.
wanted to see. I wanted to show I wanted to show our communities that there are some good cops up there because I believe I had a very strong moral compass. But after talking to the elders and working in security for 7 years, I realized if RCMP is even 10% as corrupt as security guards are, I want nothing to do with it. I can't. My soul.
Mm.
I know how security guards, like, they they file so many false reports. They do a lot of shady stuff, and I'm like, these people wanted to be cops.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's some probably cops that I was like, no, 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 no. I'm just gonna tell jokes for a living because I have a big mouth, and
Yeah.
they'll get me. They'll get me. I'll be on the dead. I'll be dead. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be dead trying to prove a point. You know.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why I like, I always say this to people too. You know, certain people will tell me like, oh, I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to do that. I'm like, you either do or you don't.
Right.
If you're trying to do something, it means you're not passionate about it.
Yes.
Because I never tried to do stand-up comedy. I was obsessed with stand-up comedy. And I did it. And like when you become obsessed with something and you have a passion for something, you just do it. So I was trying to become a police officer, but I
Mhm.
had no passion to do it. And like whatever little passion I did have was completely destroyed in the college system because I would hear firsthand accounts from people who were like staff sergeants and they were really high up and they had been a police officer for like 30 years and now they're just teaching at the college, right? And I was like, man, this is really corrupt. Like I'm learning from the inside just how corrupt this can be, and I'm hearing it from the horse's mouth. Like
Mhm.
I'm hearing it from a person who's like, yeah, when I first started on the job, they didn't like one of the other officers, so they tried to plant drugs on his desk
Yeah.
because he was talking too much about the things that were wrong with the other people. And so it became us versus them. And that's very much the mentality that they fall into.
Yeah,
It's
I feel that 100%. And that thin blue line, I feel
yeah.
is I can keep a secret. That's all that thin blue line is for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, when it, like, I don't want to get into whole,
I
like,
know. Oh, we're going.
yeah,
No,
it's,
no, no. Because
there's so
yeah,
much
I
there,
know
but
we
you're like,
both have that same vein of
yeah,
you were in police foundations. I used to be security guard. I wanted to be RCMP. You wanted to be cop. So it's hard. It's hard. And we're both
it's just
comics.
like, yeah, now we're both comedians, well,
Yeah.
because of that reason, but it just blows my mind how, like, you can put to serve and protect on the side of your vehicle, and it's really to serve and protect the rich.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's if you picture the government as like a castle, right? The
Hmm.
police are the guards protecting the castle.
Yes.
That's all that they do. They protect the queen and the king's interests, and it's never ever changed. It's been that way since like as far back as history can go when they started creating these kingdoms of power. We just changed the name to government and prime minister. He's the king. He's the king of
Hmm.
Canada, right? Like whatever you want. Yeah, he's elected, but like not really. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
whatever he wants to do, he can kind of just do it. Same thing in America, same shit. Like they'll just do whatever they want to do.
Exactly.
But putting all that aside,
Yes. I
let's
actually
sorry, go ahead, I'll
Yes, I
shift
actually
gears.
wanted to go on the same vein. So you remember that first time doing comedy, that rush you got, like when you got really good laughs? Let's say you did a set where boom, 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 every joke landed. You know that feeling, that rush,
Mm-hmm.
that inertia, that feel. Oh, I'm like, you can't do heroin, man, because you're trying to find that same,
Yeah.
that same first feeling. When you're a comedian and you just boom, 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 that feeling comes over and over and over. So you don't need to do hard drugs. You got comedy. And I had that feeling at Absolute Comedy last Wednesday, and I was like, "Oh, that's what I needed." Oh, it filled me up. Like if I had a battery meter of how, if I am feeling self-conscious or you just like very insecure, it went boo, 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 and I was like, okay, I'm filled again, and I'm confident, and I'm going back out. So
Yeah.
the crowd reminded me I am funny,
Yeah.
and yeah, so
Absolute comedy is a great room for that. It's so conducive for laughter, right? Like
Mhm.
people there, you can tell that they know they're at a comedy club. They're there to have a good time. They're willing to laugh at stuff. There's not really a lot of people who are there like not wanting to be there. So for comedians, it's like that's the biggest confidence boost is when you do absolute comedy. Like I
Yes.
love performing there. It's if you come out of there like I'm unstoppable. I can take I can
I
do anything.
I know I felt like a superhero. I was
Yeah,
yes.
it's literally like such a boost.
It was, and it's what I needed. And the
Yeah.
staff were like, "Wow!" and the shaking my hand and stuff. And even the comics were like, "You did really well up there." I'm like, "Oh, thank you. Can I get that in writing?" Oh,
Yeah. I just need it on my website.
yes, exactly.
Like reviews. 5 stars. There's a question that I ask on every podcast is if you could make a phone call to 15-year-old Janelle and give her a piece of advice based on what you know now, knowing that it doesn't affect your current timeline. So whatever you tell her, it's your life is going to continue on, but hers might change. What would you say to her?
15-year-old Janelle, I would be like, "Hey, girl, I know this is weird, and we have the exact same voice, but um, stay cringy. Stay cringy. I know you're trying to be the class clown and no one's laughing at you, but you're going to make it one day. You're going to make people laugh. They're not laughing now, but they will laugh later. And your cringiness is your creativity. So stay cringy. They might hate you, but you're going to love yourself. So stay cringy."
I like that too. They might hate you, but you're gonna love you.
Yes,
I think that's the most important thing is as long as you love the shit that you're doing, who the fuck cares when anyone else is thinking?
that's it. I
I'm
don't
gonna
mind being cringy at all.
no.
I'm just like,
Let's remind the people where to follow you.
oh,
It's at
sure.
Janelle.Niles on Instagram,
Hmm.
Linktree/Janelle Niles,
Oh, I see your
gotlandcomedy.com.
OnlyFans is up there. No, I'm just
Yeah. Shit, do I have that bookmarked? I know I'm just exposing my whole Google Chrome tabs.
yes. Oh, yes.
Check out that YouTube page as well. Like I always say, links in the descriptions below.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you want to say to the audience? Any final words that you want to leave them with?
Sure. If you ever want to try stand-up comedy, just write out 3 to 6 minutes of your own original material, find an open mic, and get up there and do it. I If I can change my life, so can you. And comedy is the best medicine. It's humor is our sacred eighth sacred teaching. So please, if you're an indigenous comedian, hit me up as well, and I will show you the way. I will do what
Yeah.
I can. So if you ever wanted to do stand-up comedy, it is as easy as just writing down your jokes and getting up there. There's lots of open mics around in your scene, and if there isn't an open mic, you can definitely create one because sometimes we have to create our own luck.
Yeah. Or drive to one.
Yes.
Hitchhike if you have to.
Yes.
Get to a city near you and try those comedy mics. Thank you everybody for watching the Johnny Rogers Show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you to everybody listening. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. It always helps. And I forgot to mention this in the intro, but if you want these episodes before anyone else, ad-free, you go to patreon.com/the Johnny Rogers. It's like $1 a month. You're going to love it. It's going to be great. Janelle, thank you so much for coming on the show. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.
Walalan Chimagwich. Thank you.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.